Welcome back, everyone, to what's going to be just one part in a two-part series that I'm wanting to do on Jesus when he encourages the Pharisees to go and learn what this means. And that what he's saying is, I desire mercy and not sacrifice. So I want to dive into that a little bit today and hopefully bring some more understanding for us. This phrase has been rolling around for some time, and I want to be very intentional with not ignoring everything that the Old Testament said and all the sacrificial systems set up, but also to understand it in the most full way, which is through and only through the lens and the hermeneutic of Jesus Christ Himself. This is a big issue because Jesus saying not only saying that I desire mercy, but he's also saying I don't desire sacrifice. And both are pertinent and awfully telling for those who pride themselves on sacrificing or feeling this religious compulsion to give to God. And we've been handed a bill of goods for a God that doesn't even require payment, at least payment or sacrifice in the way that we've been taught in the West. Will we sacrifice to God? Yeah, likely. Will we give? Yes. Will we give ourselves over to God? Emphatically, yes. But not in the way that we've probably been taught. So just stay with me here for a while, and we'll dive into this and try to come to some clarity and hopefully free up some of these mental shackles that have been put on you and these wayward thinkings that bring you into the fullness of the goodness of God. We cannot give to a God who already owns the cattle on 1,000 hills and who has need of nothing. We can only enter into his way of life, which is the way of self-sacrificial love that pours himself out selflessly without a thought of himself. So let's learn from the teacher himself as he lives out what he teaches through words so that we might understand what he's saying. And there are two passages where Jesus explicitly says, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. And the first one I want to read out is Matthew 9, starting at verse 9. And Jesus went out from there and he saw a man named Matthew sitting at a tax collector's booth. And he said to him, follow me. And Matthew got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? On hearing this, Jesus said, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice, for I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners. Here Jesus calls Matthew. Matthew follows Jesus, and then there's this gap of time in between. The next scene we have is Jesus is immersed in Matthew's world, sitting in Matthew's house at Matthew's dining table, eating Matthew's food. This is scandalous. This is an affront to all that was considered holy in the minds of the Pharisees. Matthew had already terribly betrayed his own people. He had sold himself out to the Roman government and told them that he would collect taxes for them on their behalf from his own people, the Jews. Moreover, the Roman government gave them free rein to take up, skim off the top for themselves over and above what the tax was so that they could pad their own pockets. They didn't care. As long as the Roman government got theirs, they didn't care what the tax collectors took. So not only were tax collectors betrayers of their own people, they also deceived and stole from their own people as well. And in response to the tax collectors in Matthew's lifestyle, they were considered the scum of the earth by fellow Jews. They were spat upon, they were cursed and outcast from their people. They were caught between a Roman government that used them and didn't care for them, and an ancient Jewish people who abhorred and rejected them. They were cursed of God, worse than the Gentile, and were not allowed to even enter the temple to worship with the Jews any longer. To become a tax collector was to resign yourself to a very lonely, rejected, and abandoned lifestyle, even from your own family. But the consolation prize for them that they were apparently willing to trade off for was a rich and luxurious lifestyle. So, before we go on feeling sorry for the tax collectors, they did choose this life. They surely didn't understand the repercussions of all that upon their choosing, just how impoverished they would be internally despite the external riches they were going to garner. Riches of this world have a way of deceiving all of us. There was no redemption for the tax collectors in the eyes of the Jews, in the eyes of the religious order. They were isolated, they were treated as moral lepers. They were beyond helping, and frankly, no one wanted to help them. Far from desiring to see them restored and healed, they were hated and cursed and forcefully rejected from the temple and all manner of religious life. The Pharisees would cross to the other side of the street when they passed them, curse them under their breath, and even spit upon them. If they were to inadvertently bump into a tax collector on the road, they would literally ritually cleanse themselves because they've been touched by an impure or unclean person or thing in their minds. Tax collectors were unclean to them, the worst kind of dirty. And there was no help for them to be clean. In fact, and this leads us to where our first Jesus scandal of this story is, a Pharisee was not only unclean, a tax collector was not only unclean, every house that they entered, being of a tax collector, would also make them unclean. The very tax collector's house, first and foremost, to them was a sort of false temple of worship, a most unclean place. Jesus calls Matthew. He says to him, "Follow me." But then he does something no one anticipated. Jesus then follows Matthew to his house. Jesus is not scared of our darkness, even self-imposed darkness. He enters into our darkness and pursues us, his lost sheep, in whatever wilderness we might find ourselves in. I mean, can you imagine the scenario? Matthew comes out of his tax collector booth upon Jesus' invitation. They're walking along, and Jesus asks, how about we head back to your place for dinner? Matthew's probably confused, probably speechless and amazed. The God that he had been taught and grown accustomed to would not only not step into his house, but would probably condemn him in his house as a house of robbers, of stealers. For his house was purchased off the backs and out of the pockets of the Jewish people that he had stolen from. Where is Jesus' call for repentance? Where is Jesus' voice of judgment? Where is the wrath of God, the justice of God, the condemnation from the law? Where is the call to sell his home and all his goods and give back to the people he's stolen from? I mean, according to this story, Jesus is not a very good evangelist, not a very good Bible teacher. He's not very good at calling people to a sold-out life for God. He is not very good about telling new believers about what they must do what they must give up in order to meet his approval. Or is he? Maybe Jesus not after Matthew's money, his home, his possessions. Certainly that might come. He's after Matthew. He is going to Matthew's home, the place where Matthew's loneliness and emptiness dwelled, where he sulked in shame and rejection. Jesus is going to the house where Matthew had bought all manner of things he thought would make him happy, try to fill that void, but did not. He's going to sit at Matthew's table where there had been many a party thrown, parties that gave a temporary reprieve and distraction from his pain and rejection, but that ultimately, at the end of the day, when the last person left the party, he found himself to even be more lonely than before the party. Jesus is going straight into Matthew's hell, his self-imposed hell, where Matthew had made his bed. And in that place, Jesus will show him that even though he has made his bed in hell, God is going to go there with him. He's going to join him there. In the place of his own undoing, the darkness and mess that he'd even created, and now had lived to regret all of it. We follow Jesus, certainly, yes, but the even greater truth is, He pursues and follows us all the way down to the deepest part of our being. God always initiates the relationship with humanity. He comes to where we are. He follows us and pursues us wherever we might run. He comes to us in the Garden of Eden, for Abraham, the Ur of the Chaldeans, Mount Sinai, our fishing boats sitting under a tree. He ultimately, eternally, and unconditionally joins himself to humanity in his incarnation, fully God and fully man in one person. He became one of us. To be one of us and inseparably join himself to us. He came to where we were at, not just locally and physically as he did his incarnation, which he did do, but emotionally and psychologically and spiritually and concretely. He followed us to where we are, like a shepherd pursuing his lost sheep that he values beyond comparison. Like the woman looking for her valued coin, sweeping underneath the bed, the dresser, and every crevice, holding her little candlelight to dispel the darkness and looking behind all the unkept places. He follows us to where we're at. He waits for us to realize that we have been found so that we can respond unfettered to his call to follow him. Surely God's goodness and mercy, who is Jesus himself, shall pursue you and me unrelentingly all the days of our lives. We can run, but we're not fast enough to escape him. We can hide, but not from him in his presence. David found that he could go to the deepest darkness and voila, there he is. We can deny him, but he will deny our denial of him. We can say no to him, but his yes to us overcomes all the no's of the false self. So we may as well give ourselves up to his love and mercy and follow him to all the places in us that we've avoided or neglected or put off limits, because he's trying to go there and he will go there anyway. Jesus isn't just interested in coming all the way into our darkness, into our mess. No, he has no intention of leaving us in that place. And with all the talk of psychology and counseling, which has its place, it can be a good thing, remember, this is a finished work that rescues us from the darkness. He meets us there in order to rescue us and heal us from us and then deliver us and take us to a whole new wonderful reality. He probably will take us to places that we've avoided, places we thought he would never visit, the place of our false sense of abandonment. And in that place, he'll make it a place of communion and celebration. He's going to sit with us there and he's going to eat with us. He is, as eating was and is in that culture even to this day in the Middle East, he's going to associate himself so fully with us to the point where he would call us his friend. Far from him merely tolerating us or putting up with us, he has come to us for friendship, for communion, for fellowship. And friendship with tax collectors and sinners is not something that can be tolerated by religious zealots. This to religion means that you are endorsing their lifestyle at best, or at the very least tolerating their behaviors. And God of judgment will not have any of that. Jesus, by sitting down to eat with such offscour, shows to religion that he's in favor of them, that he doesn't share the same repulsive opinion as the Pharisees and their gods do of the sinners and the tax collectors. Their religious God is too holy to look upon sin and evil, let alone dine with the impure swine that Jesus is apparently wallowing with. Jesus, to them, is certainly no God at all if he were to rub shoulders with such, or even tolerate such vile human beings. Jesus, in his intimate association with such people, surely has become dirty and ceremonially impure himself, they would think. So, the Pharisees asked a question, which is less of a question and more like the same accusation or question that Habakkuk had towards God. Why would you eat with such sinners? Or, as Habakkuk would say, and which is commonly cited by religious folk, you are too holy to look upon evil, God. Let's not stop there. So Habakkuk asks, so why do you? Because he has seen them. He's looking beyond the pale of their past, beyond the vileness of their false selves, and into the longings of the deepest heart, to be loved and accepted and known and included, to want to be part of a family, to be embraced. Jesus responds by saying, it's not the healthy that need a physician, but the sick. Sin and the negative behaviors and evil traits that stem from the fallen flesh is not so much something to be condemned, it's something to be healed. We were sick and blind and dumb and deaf. We don't need condemnation, but the medicine of his healing presence to sink into the deepest part of our being. We needed not another judgment, but an antidote, a cure. And our cure came in the form of a physician who would become sickness on our behalf and heal us to the core of our being. In fact, he was doing more than simply associating himself with us sinners. He would indeed become sin itself on our behalf. He would take our old false self-nature and the nature of the first Adam and make it his own in order to heal us from the inside out. As Gregory of Nazianzus famously said, the unassumed is the unredeemed or the unhealed. He took the full weight of the tormenting sickness he laid in our sick bed and allowed it to become his deathbed. Jesus, by becoming our friend, lived the greatest form of love toward us by laying down his life for his friends. He laid down his uncreated, eternal life, took on and clothed himself with the mortal life corrupted by sin and rebellion and the wages associated with that sin that we brought in the world, which was death. Much has been said about divine mercy, mostly in the context of mercy being the placating of God's wrathful judgment or a condition of justice that had to be met in order for God to allow or to be merciful of God towards us. Like God has some sort of like higher justice that he has to appeal to that's greater than his goodness and mercy and love, which is unconditional. We've been taught that certain conditions of justice must be met, namely the act of repentance or a carrying out of a divine judgment on a nation or a people group, and then and only then can mercy be granted or given. Mercy, we've been taught, cannot be meted out or given freely without certain conditions being met. The carrying out of a judgment or a transaction must be paid. But what if justice is snatched from the tight grip of a maligned view of justice given to us by the church and their understanding of a judicial God who demands that certain criterion must be met in order for mercy to be granted? Let's look at the Apostle Matthew, his view of justice being lived out as God in our midst and in our world. This is the clearest picture we have of God's mercy. Christ incarnate and lived out in front of us. This is recorded in Matthew 12:15. But Jesus knew what they were planning, so he left the area, and many people followed him. He healed all the sick among them, but he warned them not to reveal to anybody who he was. This fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah concerning him. Look at my servant, whom I have chosen. He is my beloved, who pleases me. I will put my spirit upon him, and he will proclaim justice to the nations. He will not fight or shout or raise his voice in the public. Hello, street preachers. He will not crush the weakest reed or put out a flickering candle. Finally, he will cause justice to be victorious, and his name will be the hope of all the world. Can you imagine? God didn't scream and yell eternal torment, damnation, and judgment at people. If anyone knew the severity of the hell we have grown to become so fond of in the West, wouldn't it be Jesus who knew the severity of hell more than anybody? And if so, wouldn't he be yelling at people? I mean, apparently, according to them, he's created it after all. He would feel the zealous compulsion to paint the direst picture that awaited those who denied or refused his salvation. And yet, he was gentle and tender and patient. Jesus healed all the sick that were brought to him. And in light of Jesus righting the wrongs of sickness and the sin that brought the maligning to people's bodies, Matthew quotes Isaiah. And what does Isaiah proclaim? That the healing of sicknesses, the casting out of devils, and the proclaiming of the good news is the proclamation of justice to the nations and the causing or enacting of justice in the world to be victorious. What? Healing, deliverance, and freedom is justice? Yes. The making right of the wrongs, deliverance from all that oppresses and hurts us is God's justice in the world. Now let's take a closer look, a look that maybe the church should take at what, or more poignantly, who mercy is. And here's a little bit of a quote, a lengthy quote from Father Anthony Conerius, hope I didn't say his name wrong, on the meaning of Kyrie eleison, or Lord have mercy. The word mercy, he says, in English is the translation of the Greek word eleos. The word has the same ultimate root as the Old Greek word for oil, or more precisely, olive oil, a substance which was used extensively as a soothing agent for bruises or minor wounds. The oil was poured onto the wound and gently massaged in, thus soothing, comforting, and making whole the injured part. The Hebrew word, which is translated as eleos and mercy, is hesed, which means steadfast love. The Greek words for Lord have mercy and Kyrie eleison, that is to say, Lord, soothe me, comfort me, and take away my pain. Show me your steadfast love. Thus, mercy does not refer so much to justice or acquittal, a very Western interpretation, but to the infinite loving kindness of God and his compassion for his suffering children. It is in this sense that we pray, Lord have mercy, with divine frequency throughout the divine liturgy. It is true that many times evil men and women with evil intentions and their evil ways oppress innocent, weak, or impoverished people. It's also true that God does not ignore this evil behavior and we'll all be accountable. We're all culpable for our actions, okay? We'll all be salted with fire, the fire of his divine love, which chastises us in order to restore and heal us at some point in time. It is also true that we, as mercy givers who love without counting men's sins against them, and we are those who can proclaim to them, God, forgive them, they don't know what they do, can see that they themselves are in need of healing and deliverance. We are to see those who hurt others, even us, as those who are in great need of forgiveness, deliverance, and healing. As the adage goes, the old adage, hurt people hurt people. This does not mean, of course, that when it's in our power to stop the oppressor or the evil oppression, we don't stand up against that which hurts the innocent and those who can't defend themselves. We absolutely do that. There is simultaneously a divine wrath, God's love against all that oppressors, against the oppressive systems or oppressor, in a divine forgiveness and mercy from their state of darkness and bondage. We don't stand in indifference when small children or children at all are trafficked, when there's a system of government that oppress certain races or ethnic groups, when there are people that are imprisoned and the death penalty is still going on, or whatever, or any other type of injustice that's done. We don't have to stand idly behind that and not voice what we know to be the true heart of God. We stand with and alongside the oppressed, the weak, and the innocent, and also, in a different manner, stand with the oppressor, how they are known in Christ, against their fallen selves. The Pharisees complained to the disciples that Jesus was eating with these, quote, dirty and holy sinners, and Jesus hears them, and he responds this way. And Jesus, having heard what the Pharisees mumbling, complaining about it, said to them, they who are whole have no need of a physician, but they who are ill. Jesus says, tongue in cheek, those who are whole, healed, and strong, and able don't need a physician, but those who are sick. Jesus indicts the Pharisees in this. The Pharisees, by their rejection of the only one who can heal, restore, deliver, and set them free, are under this strong delusion and pride that they are in fact the ones who are whole and in need of nothing. They think that they, and their religious pride, are the ones with the answers, the ones who are the guides for the blind, the ones who know the truth. They're in need of nothing and in need of no one. They have their God. They exclusively know him, and nobody else knows him like they do. And they are not here to be told that they have missed him completely. That is indeed one of the tragedies of religion. One becomes so firmly planted in this weird Western Christianity ideology, being told Sunday after Sunday that they believe, and we're the ones that believe in the only true God and that they have the truth cornered. Then when the actual gospel of the goodness and mercy and finished work of Jesus Christ comes along and shines on them, they might even be drawn to it momentarily, but they will ultimately, most of them, reject it out of fear. Fear that they have believed the wrong thing about their God or in the wrong God altogether, and their mind just can't comprehend all the wasted time and energy and work that has been given to this false God. So instead of rejoicing in the truly good news about the true good God, they reject the good news altogether out of a fear that they have believed the wrong things about God their entire life. And they have. And so, the sickness remains. The illness that stems from a falsity of God and prevents the goodness of God from saturating their heart and their mind and their body is thus rejected. The very thing, the very one who can heal them is rejected as the illness himself. Jesus was viewed as a threat. He's viewed as a threat to their airtight system of beliefs. And when we see threats, one of our defense mechanisms is accusation. Instead of a heart posture being open to the possibility of something greater than what we believed, a God greater than we believed in, fear causes us to criticize that which we don't understand. They accuse Jesus of being wrong or unrighteous or defiled for eating with these unholy people, when truly they should have been asking themselves why they weren't eating with Jesus and why they have chosen not to associate themselves with the very ones who are blind and need healing. It's Jesus, though, that has the problem. It's those people over there with the problem. And in these accusations, there's a grave fear revealed. The fear of honestly looking at ourselves in the potential beam in our own eye. The potential of admitting that we might be the ones who are sick when we've been pridefully projecting that we're the ones who held the cure. The fear that the God we so confidently preached and taught people to believe in is actually a false caricature and not the true God who's revealed in Jesus Christ. That fear of being wrong, having took ourselves entirely too seriously, keeps one, like the elder brother, outside the party, criticizing the God we believe in and the brother we think needs more punished and held more culpable for all the wrong that he's done, and then insist on not joining the party altogether. We are, after all, the ones who didn't go out and sow our lives in riotous living and sleeping with whores and cocaine, getting blackout drunk and rejecting our faith upbringing altogether. We, like the elder brother, we were good little boys and girls. We stayed home. We didn't forsake going to church. We didn't do drugs, didn't sleep around. We memorized all the Sunday school verses, and we did what was expected of us. We are the righteous ones. We're not sick. So Jesus says to them, you clearly don't need to be at this table eating with me. This table is only for those who are sick and in need and want a physician and want to be healed. They know they're sick and in need. They need a doctor to heal them. You, on the other hand, you're just fine. There's one thing I need to tell you before you head on out that door. Go and learn what this means. I, God, desire mercy and not sacrifice, for I did not come to call the righteous but sinners to metanoia. Jesus was a rabbi, a teacher, but his teaching was less about grasping facts or parsed truths and more about living out that reality and truth in the world. His way of teaching was very hands-on, very didactic. See one, do one, teach one. The Pharisees, the religious class of the day, understood the facts and had the truths of God's law, God's way, down pat, but they missed Jesus, God, altogether. Instead of learning what God's law really meant and what was the heart behind the law, its pure intention, and the outworking towards those who were lost and hurting and imprisoned, the law was used instead to separate themselves from the sinners and the evildoers, and also separate themselves by projecting a holy man to others. As Jesus said, having their cup dirty on the inside and being full of dead man's bones are like whitewashed tombs. They look good on the outside. They have an image to protect, but inside, there's other things going on. Instead of feeling the heart of God towards others through the law is summed up in this: to love God and to love others. They use that very law to divide and separate. In fact, Pharisees means separatist. These Pharisees had memorized the law, memorized the whole of the Old Testament, and yet missed the God of the Old Testament revealed in Jesus Christ altogether. Instead of all their learning leading them into truth, it caused them to walk in a greater darkness. Why? Because the light that they thought they were walking in was actually darkness. Ever learning, Jesus said, but never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Facts without reality, facts used to manipulate and control others, to tell the what or the how to know God, but actually preventing others from knowing the real true God found in Jesus Christ. Pretty stringent judgment for that. So the teacher sends the teachers on a real assignment, an assignment to learn the real truth behind what they had been taught their entire lives but had failed to see. Not to teach them that God's law wasn't good or true, but that Jesus as truth was the culmination and the summation of all the law that they had read and sought to follow. And how did Jesus live the law out perfectly before them? He lived it out through giving mercy to all those around him. And next time we'll pick up with Jesus quoting Hosea to the Pharisees and see how Jesus is the fulfillment of all the scriptures that the Pharisees used to separate themselves from the very ones that they were called to bring healing to. Until next time, bless you.